Well, 100 years have passed since 2026, right before the Great Transition.
And we still don't understand what was going on in the Iran-American conflict.
In the studio, Carla Marksington. Hope lost.
Neo-mask moonshine.
So it was 2026, Iran against the USA, 100 years ago. Carla, do you think the elites are hiding everything?
Of course, it was a crisis of elite control leading to a new order.
Maybe there was an opportunity for cooperation? They should have built a bridge of democracy for Iran, not a lever of power.
Let's start with the goals. According to game theory, it's all about survival.
In 2026, the US wanted hegemony, a balance of power in the Gulf for its security. Iran wanted the survival of its regime and regional leadership through a network of intermediaries within the Allied coalition axis of resistance. In addition, international players such as China and Russia aimed to weaken US leadership, but the US declared itself an independent actor. Hope, do you believe they could have simply talked? At first, I thought the US was genuinely promoting democracy, but now I see that if Iran integrated into the global economy, the US could simply lift the sanctions. China and Russia, through BRICS, sought multilateral cooperation. Cooperation through international institutions, equal rights, and negotiations could save everyone.
No. Firstly, BRICS was a coalition against U.S. leadership. Secondly, the U.S. needed global control over oil. At that time, oil was the backbone of the global economy. Oil was pegged to the dollar, and fluctuations in oil prices could cause an economic crisis in the U.S. itself. The U.S. was interested in ensuring that its oil companies could profit from oil. Furthermore, oil is a lever of geopolitical dominance. Through oil, the U.S. can influence China and Russia, which are very dependent on oil. The U.S. did not want control over oil transportation to be in the hands of other countries.
Okay, what is the context? US enemies, Iran as a threat,
China and Russia as revisionists.
and North Korea? Are you kidding? US allies in this region, Israel, Saudi Arabia. Oil is a tool of hegemony. For Iran, oil is survival. 90% of exports go through the Strait of Hormuz.
For other antagonists, it's a vulnerability.
Carla, why don't the US want to block the strait?
20 to 30% of the world's oil passes through the strait. A blockade would cause a rise in oil prices, a recession, and a crisis in the U.S. economy.
This could lead to war with Iran too, and it would harm diplomacy with Oman, Qatar, and Turkey. These are our mediators and allies in the region. The UN could stabilize the situation. The US is the main actor in this anarchic time. Why should the US sacrifice its leadership? We are talking about survival. The US uses sanctions against Iran, tariffs, organizes protests internally, nuclear negotiations, pressure through allies. Sovereignty is sacred.
Economic dominance is very important for the U.S. to maintain leadership. The U.S. doesn't want a crisis for its elites. This could provoke a revolution within the U.S.
The US is an actor in international institutions, and they could gain more through cooperation. By isolating themselves, the US is harming itself. Let's numb the pain. So what was the US strategy?
The U.S. devised a multi-stage plan. First, they weaken Iran with sanctions, a nuclear agreement, and proxies, while simultaneously strengthening their coalition with Israel and the Arabs to encircle Iran. Then they used the threat of escalation to force Iran to the negotiating table and accept U.S. terms.
But what if Iran doesn't accept the US terms? For negotiations smarter when the US uses a democratic approach through the IAEA and the UN. Nope, we in the US don't trust anyone. What if the IAEA and the UN don't take our side? So how did the strategy play out? Did the US get the desired result? So, yes, they have successes. Damage to Iran economy and ruins, isolation. But downsides too. Blowback for the US, attacks on bases, humpback frame. Yes, the Iranian population rallied together. China and Russia strengthened their alliances, but they lost part of the oil market. But therefore, they developed gray schemes.
I'm confused by this multi-stage plan. So did the U.S. win or lose?
Iran closed itself off to a democratic regime. The protests were suppressed. And the North Korean regime became more justified. They turned out to be the main beneficiary of this political struggle.
Hope, are you kidding?
Interesting news from 2126 for those who listen to the end. In the Arctic, at 4,000 meters, the U.S. Army confiscated 3 drops of oil from a giant squid.
I'm sure they could have negotiated with the squid. It doesn't need the oil. All 3 drops will go to create a vital product for humanity. Coca-Cola.
And with that, we say goodbye.